Hello, Purple. How's it going? Looks like this was scheduled to start around 6 o'clock. I'm not really sure who put it on. BLM in particular decided not to come. I think there was concerns about a showdown with the UCA people. So the Utah Citizens Alarm, if you're not from here, they're the local armed anti-BLM group. I don't really know what to call them. They're not like a boogaloo group, in that they're kind of more sort of brown shirty fascist type, pro police, all that kind of stuff. So. My homie with a badass shield. Oh. Cool. How's it going?
Never stated that they collect rent from the police, so if we give the space for free, that is an expense to the city. Either way, it remains undocumented. If one compares how things are expensed between police services and Unified Fire Authority, they would see that UFA is a flat fee expenditure, meaning that there are no other varied costs associated with them, whereas the police expenses are separated out, making it more difficult to see and add all the numbers up. From an accounting standpoint, flat fees are a much more simple way to see the total costs. What we paid for the police in 2019, the $5.9 million annually, is still a misleading number. The extra administrative overhead costs were all Tally Bruce was asking for, yet she was perceived to hate our police department and was further harassed by Chief Russo and his officers. The only way to get a true comparative of police service costs from Salt Lake County Unified Police is to have total transparency in our in-house police accounting, so the city can compare apples to apples. Not one city council person nor Mayor Peterson was willing to ask for these changes. On May 20th, 2020, the Chief of Police, Robbie Russo, filed a lawsuit against our city Councilwoman Bruce and 10 unnamed individuals for demanding transparency related to the budget and for having a conspiracy to fire him. This was while she was in her first year of office. Other council members and Mayor Peterson tried to convince her that the costs were the $6 million as submitted on the city budget. However, the numbers did not add up. It took 17 months for those figures to surface. Ms. Bruce had requested the police department divulge the entire budget, which when received and upon further inspection, it was realized that it comes up to $8 million annually spent for our police, not the $6 million they were claiming in the budget. Our police department has buried administrative costs from the budget numbers as to not raise public scrutiny. They were listed as unexplained, lumped-in admin items elsewhere in the budget. Chief Russo, by placing a lawsuit against our city, erodes public trust. How can the police chief continue to give the services we pay for when he's suing our city officials? If you Google his name with lawsuits, you'll get a sense of how much he has cost our city in litigation alone over the years. He needs to be placed on unpaid administrative leave, at the very least, until these matters are legally resolved. History repeats itself. yourself, look at Chief Russo's history with suing former Sheriff Winder and the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office in 2007. Same idea. Former Mayor Collimore is responsible for jeopardizing Chief Russo's position with the Salt Lake County Sheriff back then, getting Chief Russo in trouble, placed on administrative leave, and ultimately terminated. So one is left to believe, in order to make things right, former Mayor Collimore put Chief Russo in charge of our police department. This city won't see change until our seats are filled with honest, responsible, and trustworthy representatives. I would like to personally thank you, Callie Bruce, for being so courageous and being the voice for those of us who have never been represented.
Go Callie!
Woo! I will not be silenced until Chief Russo is no longer chief. Zane and his amazing family see justice. The transferring of problematic officers who have received multiple complaints ends. The CHPD ends qualified immunity and are required to have complete transparency. We are all supposed to feel safe and secure in our community, not just those of us who share the same agenda as Chief Russo. No justice, no peace. Thank you.
Woo! Hi there, Danny.
What an incredible speaker. Thank you so much.
Woo.
Next up, we have an amazing speaker who has been to so many council meetings and who has stood up for Cottonwood Heights since its inception, Mr. Ed Schwartz. Please come on up.
Martin Luther King Jr. said it succinctly. The time is always right to do the right thing. And if we look back on history in this quaint little community of ours, it's riddled with corruption. From our beautiful city hall, when we did not have a say as the public on how much they were going to spend to build it. It became known as Collimore's Kingdom. But now as we move forward in history, things have gotten much worse since our beloved chief has shown his true colors and has exercised his leadership style.
That's right.
And his management style. Let's look at what has happened. I just recently received information from a grandma request, which I made public. Our city has 42 vehicles at a cost of almost $1.95 million, almost $2 million for vehicles. And as was brought up by our previous speaker who detailed it out beautifully.
Just a minor $2 million.
There are hidden costs to operate these, just the vehicles I'm focusing on. Now, I did another grandma request to find out the salaries of our police department. Now, I got a question for everyone here this evening. If you had a compensation package of $240,000, would you expect to exude a certain professional leadership that is a positive role model for a city?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Russo's compensation package is right there, $240,000. We have a nice payroll on the police department of over $4 million. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue if that's just or unjust. What is unjust is the lack of leadership from Mayor Peterson and the City Council, with the exception of our councilwoman sitting right here today. In any other community, with what has occurred, We have a teenage boy murdered, shot in the back. We have people arrested who are demonstrating and protesting peacefully. We have lawsuits against city police and former city policemen. Now, let's look at the cost-benefit of having Chief Russo as the esteemed leader of our police force. The cost is through the roof. We have a salary of $240,000. We have a payroll of over $4 million. We have vehicles almost approaching $2 million. Yet, there's a lack of accountability from Chief Russo and Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
A total lack.
Fire Russo!
No, the council will not do that. There has to be administrative steps taken place. He should have been automatically suspended without pay the day everything broke out. But no, they're trying to protect him. That is what's going on in this city right now. We are protecting a chief who's basically not a chief.
Wannabe gangster.
Not a chief.
Little gangster.
Now, we look at this. The vehicles I looked at do not cover the insurance. It's just the cost of the vehicle and the build out for our beautiful, efficient vehicles. Do you realize that the city of Cottonwood Heights has 4 vehicles outfitted for canine? Where are they? I'd like to give them a bone. Come on. We need 4 vehicles for canine dogs? Our SWAT team needs a vehicle when they have a sleeper in the back? These questions need to be asked of the mayor and the council. And their action needs to be taken immediately. Enough of the backdoor politics in Cottonwood Heights. It has hurt the public. We have money going to our police department that could help elderly people in this community who are unable to get out because they have to have food delivered to their homes. But yet, our police force has 42 vehicles for 37 people listed on their payroll. I don't know what that's about. Let's find out. Let's play, let's dig deeper. Well, I dug deeper. I sent off a letter to the editor with a lot of information. And I get back from the Salt Lake Tribune, well, Ed, we'd like to print your letter, but all these numbers you're putting out, I sent him the grammar request. And I'm hoping that the letter appears and that the public actually knows what the hell is happening within our little beautiful community right now under the esteemed leadership of Chief Robbie Russo. I also have a direct question for our mayor. Do you want Robbie Russo to dictate your legacy with all your years of service in Cottonwood Heights? You're going to let our chief, who is corrupt and who is bringing down the force, to determine your legacy of service to the city? That's a question you need to answer, Mr. Mayor. That's a question the people of Cottonwood Heights need an answer to. Not just sitting back and listening to the good old boy syndrome. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. When we're paying somebody $240,000 a year, I expect to see a chief who is smiling and helping people, not a chief who is breaking up peaceful demonstrations, not a chief who is suing the city and suing a councilwoman, not a chief who has, under his leadership, people who are being sued hand over fist and costing us a sizable sum of money. That takes away from our services. Now, the chief never budgeted for the COVID virus, of course. He's not that forthright. But I question the integrity of what is going on right now. I work in a substance abuse treatment center. I tell my clients every day, check your integrity. Has our chief checked his integrity on a daily basis?
Oh, is that woke here?
I can't hear you. No! That's absolutely right. He has not. As have others on this force. Our force is made up of very good people, but some of them have gone over the top. And it's time to do what's right. Justice is ours. This is our city, not Chief Russo's, not Mayor Peterson's, not Scott Bracken. This is the city that we live in, the city that we want protected. Chief Russo needs to be suspended immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week, immediately. The public has had its say. We have spoken out an incredible amount of times. And what this is a built-in delay process by Mayor Cullimore and his people in the council. That's all this is. It's a continual delay to see if Russo can hang on. Is Russo going to hang on? Hell no. I think it's time to really get down to this. The numbers speak for themselves, and thank you. It was Gabrielle. Thank you so much for detailing that out. The administrative cost, 16,000 square feet of our beautiful palace that the public had no say in. No say. And how much say have we really had in the council meetings? Oh, your 3 minutes is up. Say goodbye. Give me a break. Is this justice? Is this democracy? No. This is the way the good old boys ran the city for years. And it's time to put it to an end. It's time and has to begin with someone who's held accountable for his actions. Chief Robbie Russo needs to be suspended immediately. Muhammad Ali said this, and I think it fits our rallies, and I think it fits tonight. Thank you, Anna, for organizing this. He said this: champions are not made in the gym. They're made from something deep within inside themselves. A dream, a vision, a desire. But the will and the skill have to be present. But the will has to be greater than the skill. Thank you very much.
I feel like I'm noticing a trend. Are you? Yeah. So we're going to say this 3 times then. I'm going to say, hey, hey, ho, ho. And you guys are going to say,
Russo must
Chief
go.
somebody has got to go. Ready? Hey, hey, ho, ho. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Nice work. Next up, you have heard of her. She's an amazing community activist who's being charged with life in prison for buying paint. Hop on up here. Where are you? Where are you? She's here. Awesome. Oh my God, it's great. Thank you. Yeah, everyone, don't stand too close to me because I might shift my weight in a way that you don't like, or buy paint near you, allegedly. So, like Anna said, my name is Madalena McNeil, and I am one of the protesters being charged with multiple felonies for activities that took place in Salt Lake City on July 9th in response to the clearing of the officers involved in Bernardo Palacios' murder. So I don't know as many facts about Cottonwood Heights as Ed and Gabby do, so I'm very sorry if you really like numbers because I don't have any for you. But I am going to keep it pretty quick. I was kind of asked to talk about protesters and protesters with charges and how you all can support them. And there are protesters from the protest in Cottonwood Heights who are also facing felony charges. And I just want to kind of say to everyone who's here, especially as we're talking about Chief Russo and talking about the impact that this person has had on so many lives and the impact that this police department has had on so many lives, that we are going to win, basically is what I would like to say. There is a big difference between fighting out of fear and anger and then fighting out of love and hope and belief in something better. And one side is doing that and one side is not. And I honestly do think it's come to the point where you kind of have to pick a side. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's been here today and who has supported protesters. Like I mentioned earlier, my charges are for allegedly buying paint at Home Depot and then shifting my weight in a way that an officer didn't like. And I think it is absolutely unacceptable that police officers can decide who gets to live and who gets to die, who gets to live their entire lives and who has to spend their life in prison. It's unbelievable and it's unacceptable, and police shouldn't kill people, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Police shouldn't kill people. St. James should be here. Bernardo Palacios should be here. So many people should be here right now. And they aren't because police, the way that, so today I was at my house actually, and I have a Black Lives Matter sign out front, and somebody drove past my house and screamed some words I won't repeat because I think there's a child here, but, and then said all lives matter. And, there's this idea of all lives matter, blue lives matter, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's something I've been having a really hard time dealing with, is the idea that police lives matter more than other people's lives. And that's not true, it's not acceptable, and I want to tell everyone here that we don't have to live like this. We really don't. We can believe in something different, and we can fight for something different, and people have been doing that for generations, and people are going to keep doing it after we're gone. But right now is our time to do this and to fight for this. So thank you to everyone who has shown up. Again, I can't stop saying thank you because I feel very supported. I know a lot of the other protesters feel very supported, but this is going to be a long, long, long fight. And Sim Gill seems pretty determined to put us in prison. So thank you for your support. Please continue to donate to the bail and legal funds. And if you know anyone who's been impacted by this, please reach out to them and see how you can help them, and just keep raising these issues in your community. There's a quote from Malcolm X that basically says that we're not outnumbered, we're out-organized. And I think that's true. And that's absolutely true right now, is we're not outnumbered. We just have to organize, and we have to stay together, and we're stronger together, no matter what. Yeah. So, that's the thing that keeps me going, is that hope in something better, and the hope that I feel, and the belief that I feel that our lives are worth fighting for, and Black lives are worth fighting for. All of these lives that have been cast aside for so long are worth fighting for, no matter what. So thank you for being part of that fight. If you would like to support protesters who are facing felony charges because of things in the government, most of our trials are not until November or December. So a speedy trial is not actually a thing, is what I'm learning. But please, plan on coming to the court hearings, coming to the trials, follow different pages on Instagram and Facebook that are helping us support us. And the point of, sorry, I'm not gonna clap, but the point of arresting protesters and the point of what happened in Cottonwood Heights last week is to shut it down, is to say this is not behavior that is acceptable. We don't accept that you're speaking out against what's happening, and we don't accept that you're speaking out against how things have always been, and you're speaking out against the state. And the point is to shut it down quickly and violently. So what we need to do is keep going and not let it work. That's it. So please keep going. Please understand that the reason protesters are being targeted, the reason that they have been targeting Zane James's family, is because they want to shut down the people who are going to lead this forward. So make sure that they can't do that. Make sure that you lead this forward in whatever way you can, because we need every single one of us. And yeah, for giving me the light. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. And yeah, let's keep going.
Just so you guys know, she's facing life in prison for literally buying paint.
Our next local speakers are the victims of targeting that have been for a little while now. Please welcome the James family. crazy large crowd that was brought out by all of the people who are here tonight, and all the people who aren't here tonight, we might not be here tonight, right? And so thank you guys for supporting our family. Thank you for supporting the broader movement. Thank you for being here, continuing to be here. You're so correct, Mads. Everyone needs to just keep pressing because the pressure's on. I'm super thankful. I've had a really emotional week. I'm totally blubbery, so just ignore it. At this point, most everybody knows that our family's filed a motion in the federal court asking for our criminal case and the wrongful death of our son, civil case, be stayed until an investigation can occur. Evidence that's been withheld from our family and from the public and from the district attorney about our son's death. This is a horrible miscarriage. And everyone has sat here and told us that this evidence didn't exist, despite our understanding that even if a film didn't exist, we had eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony, a statement that was made that morning that our private investigator came out and identified by interviewing a woman who was just getting ready for work. And she got to watch our son shot and killed in front of her by a police officer who just stepped out of his car. He didn't try to pursue him. He was injured. He was limping. He stepped out of his car and he shot 4 times right towards her house and others. His testimony was taken that morning. It was also excluded. Thank God we have people willing to come forward because of the movement that's been created, the momentum that's been created in the last 8 days since August 2nd. Thank God. Because it's time for this type of behavior to stop. It's time for people to speak out. It's time. There are effects to everyone's lives when police behave poorly, don't follow policies, when they kill someone. And everyone wants to talk about, on the other side I should say, that, they're risking their lives every day. Well, they make that choice. And they get pensions, and they go home. And they see their children get married, and they have kids. And our son may not have had those choices leading up to that point if he hadn't spent 18 months being targeted.
We're at the
only thing Cottonwood Heights actually records, which is
City
arrest
Hall.
records. And half of those arrests, I would say probably 90%, but I haven't done the statistics, are dismissed after body camera evidence is disclosed. There are kids here tonight. Every single one of them had this happen to them. And we were just working and doing our thing, and then our son starts getting targeted when he's in the most challenging moment of his life, which is challenging for young children anyway to transition to adulthood. We have a police force that should be acting as mentors and role models.
Yeah, no worries. Let me know if you got any other questions.
And instead they're targeting our children, and they're targeting other people, and they're doing media campaigns to create this idea of a throwaway. The morning our son was shot, they knew where we lived. They never called us. The mayor didn't reach out. The city chief of police didn't reach out. None of his officers, who knew very well where our house is because they came over on Christmas Eve and dragged Zane and his best friend out at one point of the backyard to charge him with having cigarettes in his pocket and supposed trespassing.
Wrongfully trespassed to get to.
Yep. Regardless, no one called. And then they held us from finding him. Then they held us from entering. And at the same time, a media barrage about our son being a throwaway kid, a violent criminal, or man. They never liked to call him a kid. That's what he was. He was a teenage boy. This media campaign. And we just sat there in disbelief as we were trying to tend to him in his last hours. And he's so humble. And you know what he said? He said, "I'm sorry." He couldn't speak, but that's what he mouthed to us as soon as we walked in the room. And we had access. He said, "I'm sorry." It's that blame shifting, right? That the police do. He didn't cause what it had happened. He is broken by these people. And so, really, where do we go from here as a community? Mayor Peterson, I see you back there. Where do we go as a community from this point forward? It's very clear that the police department here is not acting in our best interests. And it's very clear that you need to take accountability for that as leader. And we appreciate your support in this. We came and asked you for this support. We came and asked you to help us. We came and asked you to look into this deeper. And we're asking for that now. Again. And we hope that you're strong enough to do that with us. So here there's a chance, just like there was a chance on Sunday for the Cottonwood Heights Police Department to shine, right? It's our little canyon, city between the canyons, right? And we have the chance to do something about this. And maybe be a role model for the rest of the nation, because what is happening here is happening elsewhere, and it's been happening for a long time. It's systemic. It's a problem across the nation. It started with people of color. We need to admit that. Move on. It's happening. It happened. It's been happening since slavery. And they're treated as throwaways. And we've allowed police power to get out of control and allowed them to arm themselves like they're a military force and train themselves as if they're going into battle when they pull up to my house to help me with my son who's withdrawing at home, trying to get off of heroin that he bought at Brighton High School. Where are those school cops when those things are happening? Where are those school cops when there are men up the street who are selling to our kids, right? Whereas Robbie Russo, when the largest fentanyl ring was busted here, how did that go unnoticed? Little old city between the canyons, right? So, let's just admit it. We've all seen it. We've all known about it. We've all allowed it to happen. We're all responsible. It's time to stand up. It's time to change it. It's time to put down our egos and our pocketbooks and our privilege. Because our life will not go on after this. It's been altered forever. And there's so many people out there, the same thing is happening to, and I don't care what color you are. It's wrong. And something should be done by every one of us. So we're asking today, Mayor, reopen our case for our son's death. The city can do that. That's what we asked you. And all of us are real. In Utah, with cases like ours, we went to a memorial, a vigil for mothers and families down at the murals. And I don't even know what day it is because I'm completely lost at this point. I think it was Tuesday. Beautiful. We had families that flew in from out of town. Most of the people there had stories worse than ours, if you could imagine. Worse. And all of those cases need to be re-looked at. And not just from the perspective of the district attorney Simgill, that, oh, I don't think I can prosecute this guy, so therefore it's justified. That is not the right lens to look at these cases.
No.
It doesn't matter what his track record is on winning. It doesn't matter how many arrests you have if they're all a bunch of BS. And that is what's wrong. So we need to drop all charges for protesters on August 2nd, for protesters who've been standing up since May 29th, and any others, because this is a democracy. We're supposed to protest. That's what our revolution was. A big protect others, unlike our police officers right now. We need to hold police accountable. We need to protect the ones that are trying to get into that institution and do something right. We need to protect them. They're out there. We know them. We had a woman who tended to our son while the rest of the gentlemen out there were rifling through his pockets while he was paralyzed, looking for a gun so they could take a photo next to his hand to prove that he had robbed something and to justify an act out of fear and malice of shooting him in the back.
The officer's name is O'Harris.
Is it?
Yeah, it's O'Harris.
I think it's O'Harris.
She's known me for a long time. I've known her 10 plus years. I've helped her
A
multiple
woman.
times.
No. She's the one who helped Zane. She helped Zane. She helped Zane. Yeah. There you go.
She's one of the good.
She said, hey, get somebody over here, quickly. You know, there's no life-saving. Every report about how they treated our son was false from get to go. So we need to protect these officers. We need to start attracting others that want to make a difference, that are there for community good, not for personal power. We need to go back and reform laws. That's what we're doing. We're doing it at the same time as we're doing all of this. We want to reform policies. It's important. There's no reason to have these types of lethal force and excessive force. You know, there needs to be training that's appropriate for the types of responses that police officers are going to come up against in communities. We need appropriate policing. And if there is force, God forbid, I just, in my experience, can't imagine where it needs to be used. It needs to be necessary. It needs to be rational. It needs to be about training. It never needs to be lethal. Human beings aren't throwaways. Ultimately, we need to rewrite the contract with police agencies, put money toward mental health and addiction services and education, because police don't prevent crimes. That's not what they're here. That's not their job. They don't do it. Community support does. Community support systems do. Having a place of safety and value and respect does for people. It's all would have taken for our son to get better. Understanding what our children are up against with this heroin and opioid addiction. 9 times is the average for someone to get sober. 9 times. 9 times. And if you're going to target kids who have problems, or even target any kid at this point because the entire rest of the country is legalizing pot, you're going to get a whole bunch of arrests and you're going to ruin a whole bunch of kids' lives. And these are the kids who are going to be in your position, Mayor. We need to treat them with respect, just like everyone else. We need to build leaders. Nothing less than just...
Yeah, that's correct.
I don't think dismantle, but damn, it's hard not to say that word.
That's Zane James's family up there talking.
At what policing is supposed to mean. And how do we make that happen together? Nothing less is going to restore that trust in our police or our community leaders in this city. And I hope that Cottonwood Heights has the brass to be able to do that. And I just want to say thank you, Tally. Only person who listened to our family. And man, she's taken a beating. Yeah. Everyone else needs to stand up.
Yeah, no worries, man. Fortunately, we didn't have the shithead UCA show up today, so.
Also, a local community activist. Please give it up for Davina Smith.
You're good.
Good evening, everyone.
Sorry, guys, I'm letting these people walk by here without getting them on
I
camera.
don't even know what I walked into. I'm a new resident of Cottonwood Heights. My welcome, I guess, gift was intentionally being hit by a car. Carl Moore, who is a native brother of mine, today, exactly today, is our anniversary of me beginning a 13-day journey on a prayer run from Bears Ears to the Capitol. And running is so important to me as an Indigenous woman, as a Diné woman. It's important to me. And a few weeks ago, I was running, and I run in an area where I can be seen in the public. And I'll back up. I always make sure I'm aware of my surroundings. And I recall 2 white men that were watching me as I was running. 3 different times I noticed them. I was taking out my phone to get ready to take a picture, and they took off. The next time was right up on by Smith's. I was crossing to head home. And a woman saw me because I was waiting, ready to cross, and I see a vehicle coming. Clearly he sees me. She waves me, go ahead and cross, and I'm crossing. I hear him rev up, and I look, and he's coming right at me. And I jumped out of the way as fast as I could. I had all his windows rolled down, and he looks at me with no care in the world, and I yelled at him. I probably wouldn't even be here.
This is a pretty local
The one that really gets me is
deal.
that
Most of these people are probably from Cottonwood Heights.
My oldest son, I have 4 kids. My oldest son, he's 6'4".
BLM purposely didn't come today.
For college on a basketball scholarship. So he's a runner too. He sees his mom do that. And he was running on his own, and he was, there was a older white male, approached him, crossed over the street, clearly due to engage with my son, and asked him, "Are you from around here?" My son said, "Yes." We asked him, "Where do you live?" He goes, "That's private." He goes, "Well, we've been getting complaints." I don't know from who, but he said, "We've been getting complaints. If you're not from here, I suggest wherever you came from." Let me remind you all, this is an indigenous lands. These lands are indigenous to the Ute people, to the Goshen people, to the Paiute people. So we are on our lands.
The mayor as well as council people are here, so it can mean nothing to do.
I did make a call.
You have no idea what you're talking about. So.
And wow, guess who took my statement? Officer Taylor. I'm so sorry, Tolly. I'm so sorry what happened to you. My interaction with him clearly didn't feel like I was safe. So it took me 2 days to feel that I could get back on the road and do something that I love for me, for my mental health, and that's just to go run. For my son, he knew that I was scared. So he ran with me, and I was more worried about him. I was targeting every white person to make sure they weren't going to target my son. They weren't going to engage my son. I'm already not feeling safe. My son leaves for college, and I'm hesitant to go out.
You can watch, but keep your mouth shut.
Run on the public road because I don't know if I'm going to be targeted. I don't know if I'm going to be hit by a car again. That needs to change, and I'm glad, Tolly, you did reach out to me. The mayor, you did call me. You gave me your personal cell phone number. I don't know if that was a good idea because I might be calling you quite a bit. But the one thing, I hope you remember what you said. You said that I made you remind you of something about change for our community. This is the time now to make that change, to be this step. Because let it be known, after that I went on viral, I went on Facebook, and I said enough was enough. And I had been receiving text messages, I've been receiving a private message on my messenger from other people of color, BIPOC people. I said, thank you. I've had these issues happen to me, but I don't know who to talk to. I don't know who will believe me. Yes, and so I'm here today as a new resident. As a few of you know, I am a force to be reckoned with. I think the time is now for me to start making that be known. As a new resident of Cottonwood Heights, I'm here. My voice is, I'm going to be out there, and and I'm going to be there to support any one of you. So thank you.
We have two more incredible speakers. We want to continue moving forward. We want to continue learning from our mistakes, but to remind us of how long this has gone on, how long we have asked for change. You all know about the Canyon Inn catastrophe. Please welcome Ms. Stojak.
I was asked to speak tonight on our experiences we had when we owned the Canyon Inn. Just a little information on the Canyon Inn. It was established in 1948 and recognized in International Ski Magazine as one of the top 25 bars in America, and we generated millions of tax dollars into this community. It was our family business. Our children would have jobs on the weekends of mopping, cleaning the restrooms, and scraping gum off the floor. Our older son would help my husband with maintenance, and when he turned 21, became a bartender and also worked in the kitchen. We were all vested in our family business, and our goal was to one day retire and turn it over to our children to run. We were also very vested in helping out in our community. For years, we'd participate in Sub for Santas for several families in need. We'd go to Costco, purchase school supplies for our children's classrooms to help the teachers and ease the burden on them. For several years during the summertime, we would work with the Utah Food Bank. For 6 weeks during the summer, we would have sunset sessions with local bands and vendors, and my husband would barbecue. Our motto was, people are hungry year-round, not just on the holidays. Our last year that we held it, we raised over $3,000 and 14,000 pounds of food. 7-Eleven owner Lonnie Roberts and her husband would fill their truck up with food to donate to our cause. We met wonderful people that became friends and family. There were weddings celebrated, birthday parties, job promotions, and even celebration of divorces. It was a time for people to come together and enjoy themselves. Our employees became our second family. Then it all starts back when a developer, Kevin Gates, and his real estate agent, Marty Plunkett, wanted to have a meeting with us in regards to being part of the empire that was being built behind the Canyon Inn. He wanted to make us a new building that we could lease back from him. We told him that we were not interested because this was our family business and hoped to one day leave it to our children. My husband proceeded to go inside to refill their water and diet soda. I was then told by the developer that my husband might want to reconsider or he'd have Cottonwood Heights do the dirty work. The years of harassment and intimidation at the hands of CHPD is insurmountable. Our business was targeted constantly. My husband was harassed, I was harassed, my children, employees, and patrons were harassed and intimidated on a continual basis. A handful of Cottonwood Heights officers came in on a Friday night into our business unannounced with their black gloves and police jackets, walking into the bathroom stalls and kicking in the doors looking for someone. They did not find that someone, then turned around and walked out. An officer tried to run my husband and reporter off the road as they were documenting. We had a female customer complain that she had been pulled over 6 times, twice in one night, on her way to the Canyon Inn and leaving the Canyon Inn. Another female customer left the Canyon Inn and was followed all the way to her house down by St. Mark's Hospital. My employees were pulled over after leaving their shifts. The biggest excuse the officers would use was their taillight was out, which turned out to be lies. I had an officer state to me that he didn't need an excuse to pull people over, that he would do it because he was bored. Officers would call Fort Union Boulevard the Golden Mile. Anytime that we'd go make complaints to Cullimore about CHPD, all of a sudden they'd try to send in minors to the bar, or we would get a state tax audit on the business. Coincidence? I don't think so. My husband had left his truck in the parking lot of the Canyon Inn over Thanksgiving one year. The owners of the lift house made us aware that an officer was walking around my husband's vehicle trying to see if any of his doors were unlocked. Anytime we would drive through the city, we would get followed. The officer would ride our bumper constantly. We were also followed to our house. Both of our vehicles were soon wired with a camera with audio and video for our own safety. An officer ticketed my husband for public endangerment in our driveway of our home because my son's truck bumper was over the sidewalk. Before he cited my husband, he went next door to my neighbor's house because he parked his car the same way, knocked on his door, and asked him to move it because he was going to cite us. Officers would come into our dead-end cul-de-sac and slow roll in front of my house, stop in front of my driveway, in front of my kitchen window to make their presence known. Officers shined a spotlight into my then teenage daughter's room, absolutely petrifying her. Officers did a prisoner exchange in the middle of the Canyon Inn parking lot, which was our private property. Officers would sit at the entrance of the Canyon Inn on our private property. We invited them to come in to eat, or they needed to leave the premise, which then they stated they could sit there as long as they wanted. Then stated, try and make me leave. They sure left in a hurry though when Channel 4 News got there and started setting up in the parking lot to do a story on the city of Cottonwood Heights and the constant harassment and intimidation of CHPD. Then they started calling on UHP to step in. My husband would go out with his video camera and start documenting at nights and the patterns of their behavior. One night in 2014, Officer Neil Green from UHP was out. My husband was recording, showing his speed, his blinker use, his proper lane change. Then the lights came on and he was getting pulled over at the light on Wasatch, right in front of the gravel pit. The officer lied about everything while my husband was being pulled over. My husband was still recording. He called me frantically, telling me he was getting pulled over. I grabbed my door guy to come with me, and we sat across the street witnessing what was going on. And of course, wouldn't you know it, 6 to 8 Cottonwood Heights cops were swarming around my husband. Long story short, the officer put a bogus address on the citation that was located in Sandy, where he was supposed to be that night. 2 of his sergeants came up to the bar and watched the video. They stated he had no business being in Cottonwood Heights. He was supposed to be on duty in Sandy. He was fired. The evening we were holding our Utah Food Bank fundraiser, Officer Bartlett came to relay a message to me from Chief Russo that I better back off and never go over his head again to the mayor, where if he wants to park a cop car in front of your business, he'll park a cop car in front of your business 24/7. For years, we have continued to ask the city to look into the continual harassment and intimidation. The thing is that Mayor Peterson and City Councilman Scott Bracken have known for years that this has gone on, yet you have chose to do absolutely nothing about it. You have been complacent in your duty to protect the citizens of this community. We are here today because of your continual lack of leadership and the systemic corruption in your police department. And we are demanding change now before you add any more blood on your hands.
Ice cream.
will make change. But we also want to remember that we're going to do that peacefully. So as we end, I want you to think about what you are going to do to persevere peacefully. Please welcome another resident, parent, and community activist, Daisy Thomas.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for having me speak again. So I've been listening to all these stories, and I really appreciate all the numbers, and I want everyone to remember that Cottonwood Heights is less than 7 area miles, and there's fewer than 34,000 residents. So remember those numbers when you take into account the inflated budget numbers. So let me get back to my speech that I couldn't remember.
We have 42 feet.
Why are we here? We're here to stand up for justice. We are here to stand up for peace, not the negative peace which Dr. King described as the absence of tension, but the positive peace he described as the presence of justice. If we care about justice, we must be willing to push past the tension and be willing to have uncomfortable conversations about how to attain justice. And as we push this conversation, we will not be deterred by those same forces that have always stood in the face of justice. Those who wrap themselves in the flag and try to shout down the people's demand for justice. Those who cannot accept that the police can shoot and kill someone else's unarmed teenage son, but cannot accept a family who demands justice for their son's murder. Those who arm themselves with a fantasy of standing up against an abusive government, but when government abuse comes to their own backyard, they chicken out. They don't stand up to power, they suck up to power. I want to remind everyone here that in every case of abuse under the sun, there has always been a flood of enablers who stand in the way of justice with one simple phrase. It didn't happen to me. He never touched me. She never threatened me. They were always so polite and friendly to me. So then what? It couldn't happen to any one of us? It's a moral failure to use your own fortunate experience as a weapon against those who are not so fortunate as to escape abuse. Survivors of physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and abuse by authorities see you. We see what you're doing, and you will be judged for your cowardice in this life and in the next. My personal experience with the Cottonwood Heights Police Department has been a fortunate one. As a progressive woman of color in the public eye, I received death threats by abusers who were emboldened by our president's fascist rhetoric. At that time, I called Cottonwood Heights Police, and they looked into it, sent squad cars by, and monitored the situation. So in truth, the Cottonwood Heights Police Department has always been polite and friendly to me. But I am standing here today because my experience is the only experience that I will accept from any of my neighbors. There is no room in this community for police harassment of women like Councilwoman Tally Bruce. There is no room in this community for police killings of teenagers like Zane James. There is no room in this community for police violence inflicted on peaceful protesters, including Councilwoman Bruce and the James family. And everyone else. The only actions we can accept from our police is the charter adopted by police departments themselves from coast to coast to serve and protect. We rightfully fully expect our public servants to act with a servant's heart. And we all deserve to live in a community where we can have trust in our institutions and the men and women who serve them. Whether police chiefs, mayors, legislators, governors, presidents, when our public servants grow too bold and behave with impunity, it is time for the people to rear up to our full height and remind them that their authority is fragile and temporary and derivative of our faith in public institutions. When they break that faith, they must be reformed or replaced. I ask of you all to remain involved, to show up to council meetings, to make sure you're listening in on them. They go live, you can subscribe on Mixler. You always get notifications, but it's done. We cannot be complacent as a community anymore. We need to make sure across the state that we are standing up for those who do not have a voice in this system. There is a very serious problem in Cottonwood Heights, in Utah, and if we don't recognize it as what it really is, what we don't want to talk about. Patriarchal, heteronormative patriarchy is killing this country. Our children are being raised in a toxic culture of toxic masculinity. They're not being shown how to treat one another, and they're certainly not being led by example by the police that they're raised to adore and respect. We teach our young children, if they're in trouble, if they get lost, find the police officer, honey. They'll protect you. They'll save you.
Not here.
Well, guess what? Most parents of color don't get to say that. Most parents of disabled children don't get to say that. They have to teach their children how to make sure that they won't be murdered. That is not a society that we can accept. If Utah wants to claim to be the family-friendly state, then prove it. Stand up for the children. Make sure you're actually focusing on the real problems that this state has. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys all so much for coming. One more time before we go. Remember, we want to thank our people on the sound system, DRAC, the Disability Rights Action Committee, our team of people live streaming this event, our ASL interpreter right here. We want to thank the National Lawyers Guild for monitoring us, Mutual Aid of Utah, and the Utah Medics Guild.